are currently going through the college admissions process, this conversation is for you. This is actually part 2 of a conversation that I had with Vanessa last week. In part 1, we talked about Vanessa's story as it relates to the importance of being true to yourself and also her struggles with anxiety over the years. This is part 2, where I realized that Vanessa has a wealth of expertise to offer you because she has a master's in school counseling and school psychology, and she has worked in college admissions offices. So I was like, I need to ask Vanessa questions about campus tours and how to handle those if they're, feeling intimidating for you. I want to ask her advice about writing those college application essays because she's been the person reading so many of them. She's been the person in the room where it happens, making those decisions about who is admitted and who is not, who's given scholarships and who is not. So some of what we talked about was actually very surprising to me. So for example, she actually said that when people are coached on how to write their essays or coached on how to interview with colleges, that sometimes that's a disadvantage. So check it out, see her explanation as to why. I found it really fascinating. And I hope this conversation helps you as you're navigating what can be a very difficult college application process. As a reminder, if you're stressed out about this, if you're struggling with anxiety, we have a signature anxiety program that can help you. Check out the link in the pinned comment below. This is the program where I take all of the tools, skills, and strategies that I've taught high school and college students over my 20 years as a psychologist to help them move forward in their education and in their friendships. So check that out. It's an introductory video that you can send to your parents. You can watch it with them. I would love that if you're open to it. But they will learn 3 keys for helping you move forward and also learn more about the anxiety program. Share that link with your parents. And without further ado, here's the college admissions conversation with Vanessa. Have you had a job in admissions?
Yes, I worked as a student worker in admissions at a college during my college years. And then when I graduated, that was my first job out of college, was at another university in admissions.
Okay. There is so much pressure on students right now about the admissions process. And is there just anything at all that you could share with us from an admissions perspective of I don't even know what to ask. Maybe it's what to do, what not to do, or any advice that you would have for us about admissions.
Yeah, I think for teenagers and young adults who are looking for a university or for a college experience, if that's what you choose, like you said, it's not for everybody. I think it's a process that's filled with a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure. And I feel like all these colleges are trying to sell you on something. We're really great salespeople as admissions counselors or recruiters or whatever their role or title may be. But I always like to encourage my students and their families, as much as we're trying to sell you on something, this is a shopping process for you. I think choosing a college or a university is a big deal, not to put more pressure on it, but I think it's also empowering that the students and their families are the ones who are in control of that decision. Nobody can tell you what college to go to. All these colleges may sound like they're great, but there's only one or a few that are going to be good for you and what you want and what you need. So going back again earlier, I think I said something about being selfish. I would encourage people to be selfish in the decision process of picking a college. There's a lot of great schools, a lot of great programs, but I think there's a lot out there too that you can find something that's best going to fit your needs. And I would say to not settle and to be picky. I also like to encourage families, if you're looking at a school, go on campus. I was a tour guide for campuses too. So it's always just fun to take people around campus and show them a feel for what campus can be like. I think that gives you a really great picture of imagining yourself in a space that you can spend the next 4, 2, 3 years of your life. That's really important. But I would also say, like, don't put too much pressure on the process. I think a lot of our young adults, and I'm seeing this a lot less now, which I'm encouraged by, but a lot of young adults like feel like, okay, I graduated high school, like my next step is college. Like you said, college isn't for everybody, or it's not for everybody right away. And I think that's another decision you can be picky in too, in determining like what you want. And if you can't find something you like right away, like, although it may not be the social norm to take a year off or 2 years off, like, I don't know, I think just sometimes like we got to do what's best for us. And I would hate for somebody to rush into a decision just because it's socially normalized, rather than to do something that they truly want to do and that's going to benefit them. As far as like the process of being admitted into a college, grades, test scores, GPA, scholarships, things like that, I would say it's not as much pressure as you would think. Don't put pressure on yourself to have the perfect grades or to take the perfect classes, to have all AP or IB or honors courses. I also think test scores, aren't always the most important factor of your college decision process. I looked at a lot of students' college applications, and I think the biggest parts for me were always their extracurriculars. It really showed me, not that they needed to have a lot, but it showed me who they were as a person, like what their interests were, and then also their essays that they wrote. I think those two things were some of my biggest contributing factors when I was making a college decision. It wasn't the resumes students were sending in. It wasn't their GPAs or grade point averages or their grades in AP chemistry or what they got on the SAT or the ACT. I really, as an admissions counselor, like really wanted to get a feel for the people that I was admitting, to see if they would be a good fit for our campus. And like I said, this is also your opportunity to find out if they're a good fit for you. You get to shop around and you get to have that pickiness, which is nice. But I would say, as far as applying, like, don't put too much pressure on yourself to be the perfect student or to have the perfect portfolio. If that's important to you, then by all means do it. Colleges are going to appreciate that. But I think as somebody who's been in admissions counseling and who has read over applications, like, that wasn't always the biggest deal to me. And in essays, I could tell like who was genuine about what they were writing and who was just writing a good story because they felt like that's what I wanted to hear. Like, they were trying to present themselves as like this really great student, which I'm sure they were, but it just didn't tell me a lot about who they were either. So, that's just something that's probably true to me and what I like to see from applicants. But yeah, I would say to a student who's applying, like, you get to be picky, shop around, go and get to experience those schools if you can as much as possible. Do some research, but ultimately, like, in the end, like, do what's good for you, and that's going to look different for everybody. The way I stumbled onto my school was, a bit of a coincidence, but I'm happy that it happened the way that it did.
Wait, this sounds like a story. Can I just ask, like, how did you find it?
Yeah, so like I said, I grew up in a small town. I always wanted to go to a big school, like a state school here in California. I wanted to move away from home because I wanted to get away from the life that I was living. And so I thought I would go to some big school far away in Northern or Southern California. I wasn't picky. I didn't have a dream school. And so it was my senior year, right in the beginning. I was in math class. And if you knew me in high school, I hated math. I was notoriously bad at math. And so I was sitting there probably bored out of my mind. And I got a slip from the College and Career Services office saying that reps from the university I went to were on campus and that I had signed up to meet with them. And I had never heard of this school before because, it was a small school 4 hours away. And it wasn't on my radar. I had never signed up to meet with anybody. But like for me, it was a free trip out of math class. And so
golden.
I get to escape math class.
Sign me up.
Yeah, I don't care who you are or what you're talking about. I'll go listen to you. You might have like candy or a snack for me or something, and I get to get out of math. So I went, and they talked about the school. They were emphasizing how small it was. And so for me at the time, it didn't really catch my attention because I'm like, oh, I live in a small town. That's a small school. Probably not interesting to me. But I kept continuing to sit there. They talked about how it was by the beach in Southern California. And I was like, okay, you got a little bit more of my attention. I like the beach. I like Disneyland. I like all these things you're proposing to me. And they talked about like having like a visit day where you could stay overnight in one of the dorms with current students and you got to experience college for 2 days. And so I was like, oh, that sounds fun. I mean, even if I don't go here, this seems like a fun little trip down south to like go experience like what college will be like. And so I went, and I think I got a couple of my friends at school signed up too, who were in that meeting. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is fun. Like a trip with some friends from high school down south to a college. We're gonna look so cool and have a good time. And so I went and I fell in love with the place. So that's why I encourage you, like if you can get onto a campus, that's going to give you your best idea of what that's going to look like. And so I was on campus and I just loved it. I loved the community that I was seeing because it was a lot of what I was longing for at the time. And yeah, I think I had gone on to some of the other campuses that I was looking at the time, some of those bigger state schools, and just like didn't find that same experience on all the other campuses that I was on. I just felt like a small fish in a big old pond. So yeah, I think from that moment on, I was like, okay, I think this is where I'm supposed to be. I didn't find another school that made me feel like that one did. And I think it was the best decision for me at the time. And yeah, I'm really happy I made that choice. And yeah, it was a coincidence how I stumbled upon it, but I'm happy that whoever wrote my name down on that board to meet with those people did it because it worked out.
And most importantly, you got out of math class.
And I got out of math class and eventually out of my small town, which was a win-win-win.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hearing you talk about the expertise you now have around admissions kind of triggers a million questions in my mind, Vanessa, but I'm going to restrain myself. Is it okay if I just ask a few more questions about this like admissions perspective that you have? Because this is, I cannot tell you how many conversations I have with young people about the pressures and stress of this admissions process. And one thing you reminded me of is like the idea of going on a campus tour. Maybe for some extroverted folks, that's cool. For other folks that I've talked to, it's like, oh my God, like there's going to be a person and it's like at a time. And like, what if my mom says something embarrassing? And then like, what if the tour person is like, they're like scrutinizing me? Or like, what if I sneeze?
Yeah.
Like, what? I'm being a little funny about it to help.
No, but it's all very valid concerns.
Yeah.
Things that sometimes
I'm just trying to convey how intimidating that can feel to some people.
Yeah.
Do you have any encouraging words for people who might be nervous about visiting a campus or going for a tour?
Yeah. I would also encourage you, like, it doesn't have to look like a traditional college tour. When I worked at my university, we had like virtual tour options where there's still a student tour guide, but we take you around campus virtually. And so that's always an option. Like I said, it doesn't get you on campus, but you get a really good feel for what the campus is like through those virtual tours. I would also encourage you, like if it's an open campus, like you don't need a tour guide to walk around yourself. It doesn't require talking to people. I mean, you can if you want to, but it doesn't always require that. But I mean, there's also like group tours, which maybe can be a little bit more intimidating. So since there's more people on it, but if it's a group tour, you're not singled out. I mean, I can't guarantee that'll prevent your mom from not asking an embarrassing question, but moms are good at that. But
much love to the moms.
Yes, much love to my mom, because she was one of the too. But yeah, I think in today's world, there's a lot of alternative ways I think you can get onto campuses or get a feel for what the community is like on campus. I know at my school too, we hosted virtual events for students who were curious about the campus. So we had events on like athletics, if you were interested in joining athletics, and we'd bring on student athletes and coaches to come talk and share, give tours of their facilities. Or we'd have events on like the theater program or the psychology program, and bring on professors and students to talk about the program, the experiences that they're having in those programs. So I think there's a lot of alternative ways to experience college if you have some of those fears. But I would always say too, it was really intimidating for me to go on some college tours. But like I said, I think it was the best way for me to see and actually envision myself in a space and get to connect. Most of the time, they're actual students at those places that you're touring. So getting to connect with an actual student was super helpful for me, because it's not an adult who is getting a paycheck from the university trying to sell you on something. It's a student who's actually choosing to pay money to be at that school, whether they like it or not. It's always just good perspective, I think, to have from one of your peers. So yeah, I would say there's a lot of different ways. I would encourage you, if you can overcome some of those fears, to try, but if not, there's a lot of options for you out there.
And if we are in that process of looking at colleges, whether we're visiting them in person or visiting them online or learning about them through their website, as a student, what are some factors, let me rephrase that. What are some factors you would encourage a student to be looking at when they're looking at different colleges? I feel like I've heard everything from, prestige to the programs they offer, to the colors, the mascot, whether they have a frozen yogurt machine, whether they have a rock climbing wall. What factors should we be looking at?
Yeah, that's a really great question. And I feel like it's going to differ for any student who's looking at a college, because everybody has things that are important to them. For some people, you want to make sure that the campus colors look good on your skin tone, because if you're wearing a shirt from that school, you want to make sure orange looks good on you. If the colors orange. For me, I always encourage students to look at a couple of things. One is the location of campus. So if it's in a city that you don't currently live in, like, I would also try to explore that city, because even if you're living on campus, like, that's still the town and the community and the city that you're going to be a part of. So you want to make sure you can find things that you can enjoy around the area. Two, I would say campus size is another thing I encourage students to look at. And like I said, that's going to look different for everybody. I originally thought I wanted a campus with like 10,000 students, because I thought I wanted to be that little fish in a big pond, because I was tired of being a small fish in a small pond. But yeah, like, if a big school is important to you, like, I mean, know that. And if a small school with a smaller community is important to you, like, I would encourage you to also know that. And sometimes you don't know until you try it out. And the third, the programs that they offer, like you said, I think is really important, because I think sometimes people have an idea in mind of what they want to do. I mean, choosing your career path at 18 is a really pressuring decision that I think is unfair that we make students do. But I see a lot of students too who, like, they have a dream school, but it maybe doesn't align with what they want to do, but they sacrifice a specific program because they want to be at that school so much. And so I would say, like, as much as you can, like, try to find a school that aligns with what you want to do. Because I think when you're paying money to learn about something that you actually like, you're a lot happier than paying money to learn about something that you're maybe not as interested in, just to have a good college experience in other areas. Other things that I would say to look for, if it's important to you, like what campus is like, what campus culture is like. If it's a diverse campus, I think that's something that's super important to me. I want to be around people who are from different cultural, religious, linguistic backgrounds. And so looking into what their student population looks like, looking into what kind of clubs and activities that they have. And if you can find something that you can see yourself doing there. For me, like I said, I was an athlete, so I wanted something. I wasn't going to play college sports whatsoever, but I wanted something that still allowed me to participate in athletics. So looking for schools with intramural programs that I can join, which is another fun way to make friends. So just things like that, like just knowing what your interests are and what you value in a college or a school, and then actively pursuing schools that meet those interests and values. I think that's the fun part of like shopping for a college. Is that you know what you want and you know what you need, and finding schools that can meet those needs. It might not be all of those needs, because no school is perfect, but trying your best to find somewhere where you can be happy. Because at the end of the day, you might be paying money for it. So you want to make sure you're happy there.
Yes. And, maybe people have scholarships and they're not paying money, but you're going to pay in terms of time, right? You're going to spend a lot of time and energy at whatever school you choose. So it's worth considering. Yeah.
Definitely.
Those are great factors that you highlighted. I'm going to revisit this recording and take notes on.
Yeah. And if you need more advice too, let me know. It's fun to dig back into like my college admissions mind.
Yeah, it's extremely valuable for people who are in the heat of that process right now and for their families. Can I ask one last question about admissions?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Any advice about approaching those essays?
Ooh, that's a really great question. One, don't use ChatGPT or any sort of AI writing tools, because we can tell.
Okay. Wait, this is going to be so like important. Okay, so why should we not use ChatGPT?
I mean, I think you can use ChatGPT to maybe be more constructive about what you're writing, but not to come up with like a whole premise or like a plot for like what your writing is going to be. I don't know. I think for me as an admissions counselor reading over things, it just makes your essay feel disingenuine. I feel like I'm not getting to know the real you, because I think only you can put your feelings into writing. Sorry, ChatGPT, although you're really helpful for me in my work sometimes. You're not the best at conveying like personal emotions or feelings, and that's what I like to see out of my college application essays, or the ones that I'm receiving. I think as a student, you're competing up against so many other students, which I think you already know that is the intimidating part of college. So you want to try to make yourself stand out as much as possible. And I think for me, what I'm looking for in terms of like standing out is like people being true to who they are. I would say to be selective about what you're writing about. I have students who've written really personal essays, which I respect them, because I know those are hard things to talk about sometimes. But yeah, I think the topic that you choose is really important, and how you're conveying yourself to an admissions panel or an admissions counselor. So maybe keeping in mind your audience member, but talking about things that are actually true to you. Like, don't make up lies about things that you do or things that you're interested in just because you feel like the college maybe promotes interest in this, and maybe you're not interested in it, but you're like, I want to go here, so I need to act interested in the things that they're interested in. I would say just choose things that are true to you. I'm trying to think of like some good examples of like essays I've written. I think one of the ones that sticks out in my mind is a student wrote about like camping with his dad, and turned it into this like really great analogy for like his life and his future. And I think it was just something really unique. Like, I'd never written or read an essay like that before. So I think something, I don't know, just something that can speak to you and who you are as a person, maybe why you are the way you are. or following the prompt, because a lot of colleges will give you prompts that they expect you to follow in your write-ups too. But yeah, just try to be true, try to be genuine. As much as you can and as authentic as it is, like try to align yourself with the school, but like don't force that if it's not there and if it's not true. And I would also keep in mind when you're writing, like don't just write something because you feel like somebody else wants to hear it. Like write it because it's actually true about you.
Okay, so be truthful.
Yeah.
And it sounds like it's okay to show alignment with the school, but don't force that too hard.
Yeah.
And just show up as yourself in a very personal, authentic, distinctive way without without lying about whatever. I don't know what examples you have of people lying, but yeah, don't try to be someone you're not, I guess. Yeah. And then I don't know. I mean, all of us have such unique fingerprints, right? Isn't that such a miracle? Like if we just were to be so uniquely ourselves, within the realm of appropriateness for a college essay, application essay, like it would just be really beautiful, the things that we would find out about people if they felt that freedom to be themselves, I think.
Yeah. And I think we can easily distinguish between like a unique essay because it's written very personally rather than like I got a lot of essays that pretty much sounded the same, like different names, maybe like a different detail here or there, but it was like the same premise. I don't know how.
What do you think? I need to know, Vanessa. What do you think was happening there? Were people like buying a essay template online, or like that was AI generated, or they were paying someone?
I don't know. It all sounded the same to me. And I don't know if it was like an essay template or somebody's encouraging them, like if it's a school counselor to write this way, hitting these points. But yeah, they all just sounded a lot of the same. I think too, in an essay, if you can, I always loved to hear from students like how one, like that school that they were interested in would be beneficial or to them, or like how the school could help them, but also like the aspects that they bring themselves to the school and how their qualities and their attributes would be beneficial to the school culture or school life or school campus. I always thought that was fun to see too.
Yeah. I think sometimes it's hard for students to have that confidence that they have something to contribute.
But right? They do, yeah. They're
because we have
this. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, sometimes it's such a difficult process of applying that we just feel like pick me, right? But I want students to have that same self-respect and dignity and confidence to know that like they are contributing themselves to this campus as well, and the school would be lucky to have them. And so there are ways that the school can benefit them and that they can benefit the campus as well.
Yeah.
This is, I'll just say it. I think one of the hard things about college applications and essays is that some families can afford to see like external consultants and experts who guide them through the process, who coach them on writing the essay, and really provide expert guidance. And for families who can access that, I just say, that's great, more power to them. And I work with some of those families as well. I guess it's just really hard for families who can't afford that. And I don't know, do you have any thoughts about that or encouragement for people either way? It just sometimes feels like a difficult thing that we don't talk about a lot around college applications, but like there can be kind of this like it's not an even playing ground.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I definitely understand that, and I also feel like I definitely heard that from some of the families that I worked with going through that process as well. I would say that that's not always the most important factor. I think sometimes too I've seen families who have worked with consultants or other outside agencies who help them through that process. And I don't think that always benefits the student, in my opinion.
Oh, why?
I feel like I've seen examples where students almost sound like robots, per se, like they've been given a prompt or they've been given a script and they're just telling me what I want to hear.
Like in an essay or in an interview?
In both.
Okay. So they were almost like overly coached in some ways.
Yes.
Okay.
I also we had 3 full ride scholarships that we used to give out. So I sat on the panel of people who interviewed students through group interviews, individual interviews, other forms and processes. I sat on a panel and we chose those people who would be awarded those scholarships, so I could tell like people who had been coached versus people who had been not coached because maybe they didn't have access to those resources. And I always felt myself siding with the people who hadn't been coached because to me they seemed more genuine. Again, this is my own personal experience, maybe my own personal bias too, but for me as a admissions representative, that was important for me, is to have students who I feel like were genuine, who aligned with our campus, and who also maybe offered something to campus. I mean, every student does offer something to campus, but puts that foot forward as well. And sometimes the students who were coached didn't seem very, very genuine in their approach. I'm sure they were, but just the way they came across because of some coaching, I don't think was in their best interest for a certain extent, in my experience.
That is really fascinating for me to hear, as someone who's guiding a lot of young people in various capacities, like some of them in my own family and then some, in therapy as well. And I always had the assumption up until this moment that folks who had like an outside consultant or coaching had an advantage. And so it's really fascinating to hear from you that sometimes you could tell and it didn't really come across that great.
Yeah. And I think too, for those who maybe don't have access to that, I think working as a school counselor, like I know personally, like the resources that the schools I worked at offered for like resume help, for interview coaching, things like that. Most high schools have a college and career center. So if your family doesn't have access to those consultants or outside agencies you can seek help from, I think plenty of public and private high schools have access to resources like that. And I would encourage you to take advantage of them, because it's interesting the lack of students who do sometimes. So
it's scary.
It is scary. Yeah.
It's scary to go. It's scary to go to those places.
Yeah, I'm scared.
I appreciate you encouraging us to actually go to the career center. A lot of students I talk to, I do plant the seed that their school has a college and career center or, vocational counseling. But my experience is that it takes a lot of encouragement for people to go. But those resources are typically awesome. Like, you don't have to love the person who works there in the center, like in the college and career planning center, or you don't have to love the assessment that they provide you. It doesn't have to be the most fun assessment you've ever taken. This is me talking to students, right? But it can really help you out.
Yeah, definitely.
So them's my 2 cents.
Those are good 2 cents. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for letting me pick your brain about admissions, because I know that is hugely valuable to people who watch this channel. And it didn't even occur to me until we were chatting here on the recording. I was like, oh my gosh, I have an expert.
I wouldn't call myself quite an expert, but I have some experience. So if you ever need to pick my brain side of this, let me know. I'm happy to help.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like you're showing us like behind the curtain, and that you're in the room. You've been in the room where it happens, I haven't. So
yeah,
it's great to hear that perspective.
So grateful to Vanessa for sharing her wealth of expertise with us about the college admissions process. I hope it was beneficial for you to hear her thoughts about that process and the advice that she has from literally being in the room where it happens, right? Where they make decisions about who gets in, who doesn't, and who gets scholarships, who doesn't. As a reminder, if you are stressed about this process, if you're struggling with anxiety, we have a signature anxiety program to help you navigate that. Check out the link in the pinned comment below. That's an introductory video that you can share with your parents. It's me talking about 3 keys to help you move forward with the next steps in your education and your friendships. And it's also where I share more about our anxiety program so that you can decide with your parents whether it's a good fit for you or not. So check that out. Hope to see you inside the program. And thanks for being here for this conversation.